Good. Ajmahari here. And I'm going to answer a comment in this video. And it's a comment that was left, I believe, on probably a short that I did called Unmasking BPD Relationship Impossibility. It's them, not you. And the commenter says, I'm glad I randomly saw this. Well, I'm glad you randomly saw it too. Like, maybe you can check out the channel more, or maybe you don't need to. Because the comment, maybe you don't need to. I really miss a man I found amazing. An almost perfect match. Oh, don't they all feel like that? Like the perfect match? Or if you realize it before you get deep in it, almost like the perfect match. There are people with BPD, unfortunately, and untreated, undiagnosed. Even if they're well into therapy, they need so much therapy to really be able to heal and recover. It takes at least, 15 years, really, for that. And so, if not more, and not in GBT therapy. It can be helpful in the beginning, but people with BPD do not recover. The dialectical behavioral therapy is not a recovery modality for BPD. It's the one that they point to remission. And if you think you are with a borderline that's suddenly remitted, nope, they're still not ready for a relationship. Anyway, the commenter says that they really miss a man that they found amazing and almost a perfect match. Grace, get out of my face. Thank you. But he has severe BPD. I knew that if I stayed, it will destroy my life. And when I did leave, if I ever managed to get out, I would be a shell of who I am. I told myself I should not have to have them a psych ward or CIA level skill set on a regular basis to make a relationship work. It's interesting, because even if you had your own psych ward staffed, or a psych ward on call for your person with BPD, which of course you can't do that, but if you could, would that really help? No, because people with BPD who are untreated and really not doing well, some struggling much more obviously and constantly than others, you're not going to be able, even if you had a psych ward on stand, like here, now again it's happening, help. It would always be about something to do with the crisis, and then trying to get to a base place, and then they would need to go to therapy, for like the good 10 to 15 or plus years, not in DBT therapy, they would start there, but then transference focused psychotherapy. But the thing is, even if they were going through some therapy, you might still need that psych ward on stand, like available, because it's circular. It's the unconscious repetition compulsions of people with BPD and what they do, what they learn to do in childhood with what were adaptive to trauma, defense mechanisms to cope and survive childhood, that as soon as they get into their teens and especially early adulthood and beyond, all those coping mechanisms are maladaptive. Guess what else they are? Relationship deal breakers. Because people with BPD have disorganized attachment, ego fragmentation, identity diffusion, don't know who they are. So, but in that ego fragmentation, imagine like a big Humpty Dumpty who sat on a wall that was made of glass, right? And then Humpty Dumpty takes this great ball. This is what happens to people with BPD when they're young, and often before the age of 2. People out there don't like to be specific. People out there who talk about BPD a lot don't like to be that accurate, do they? At least that's what I hear from a lot of clients. That's what I see. I don't know. So imagine this glass Humpty Dumpty has fallen off the wall, smashed into all kinds of pieces of glass. So the BPD fragmented ego is all these countless millions, maybe there's a big shard of glass and there's a whole bunch of little pieces, and then there's pieces you can't even see on the pavement where or this glass supposed Humpty Dumpty, who's a borderline in this case, just broke into all these pieces. This is a metaphor for the ego fragmentation. So when you meet that person with BPD, they're idealizing you, which is only going to create fantasy bond for you, slide you into the trauma bond, because what you're going through with a borderline in idealization phase, it's not that they think, oh, it feels like they think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. That it's all about you. Oh, look it. And they want to be with you all the time. And it's wonderful. Some people with BPD can be a little bit giving here and there in the idealization because they're giving to get. And they might not even know that. But many can't, even they sustain something, right, in idealization, that as soon as they split to devaluation, they have first micro devalue split or even a big devaluation split. Doesn't always smash the relationship right there. I mean, on their side, because codependents are often willing to, go further anyway, which is something you have to look at and ask yourself, why are you doing that? Why did you do that? So the thing about this is, in the idealization, you're getting the shard of the fragmented borderline Humpty Dumpty glass smash ego fragmentation of this person, usually a little, like an emotionally childlike little boy if it's a man, an emotionally childlike little girl if it's a woman. And that part is in there, and that part, they relate to you so much from that part, even in idealization, because you become the object of the representation a good, perfect parent never had. But while all this is going on in idealization, you feel like, wow, I'm being loved. I've been like needing and wanting this. This is what I wanted my whole life. Now I've met my soulmate. So this is how this person is saying this man was amazing and almost a perfect match. Well, let me just first say, too, if you have codependency, you might believe some of these things, no offense, but there isn't only one soulmate on earth for you, and it's not going to be the untreated borderline who idealizes you, and that is creating between you this fantasy bond. And then the trauma bond unfolds beyond that. And then as people know, breakup, discard, ghosting on the part of the BPD and the latter two, you got to get that person back because they're the person for you. But you don't realize what you're doing to yourself and what they're doing to you. And that there isn't really any healthy love involved. But back to Humpty Dumpty, the glass borderline. Oh, sounds silly. The shards, the pieces, the fragments that are left of these people are all disorganized, not connected. So you can have this one piece that, a lot of people with BPD, they can be really nice sometimes. Not only idealization, but just sometimes. But then, next thing you know, I hate you. Maybe don't leave me. Maybe I'm leaving you. I don't know. But I hate you. Oh, no, I don't hate you. I love you. You're filling a bunch of blanks and a whole lot of rage or something like, I don't know, quiet borderlines are different, but filling a whole bunch of stuff that you heard over and over, and then they took off, they ghosted you, or you think they discarded you, or they actually discarded you and you're never going to hear from them again, but you're all wrapped up in the rumination, cognitive dissonance, the agony of what is really the agony about the trauma bond, about the fantasy bond that connects back to your childhood is not only about the borderline. I mean, yes, they traumatize you. Yes, all of that's very real. But it's not only that. So, and then the commenter says that they knew if they stayed, it would destroy their life. And so when I did leave, they felt at the time, I guess, if they ever managed to get out, that they would be a shell of who they were. And that's true. People getting out of these relationships or being discarded, ghosted, monkey branch from, but where you don't have control, or some people just break up with them too. But codependents always feel like they want more. They're not done. It can't be over. Come back, come back, come back. The rumination and the obsession, because you get addicted to the intermittent reinforcement of the trauma bond, to say nothing of what you believed in the idealization that really was a building fantasy bond. It never really was real. It's the swan song of the borderline. It's just too good to be true. And so then this person says, I told myself I should not have to have them a psych ward, right? So remember, even I'm saying if you had a psych ward not far away from you and you had a staff because you were super rich, just this is like silly, right? But think about it. You're super rich and you got that staff in the psych ward nearby and you could send them there whenever you need to. It's always going to be the cycle of crisis, which these relationships are, which people with BPD and ego fragmentation, not knowing who they are, identity diffusion, they have no container of self. It's always just cycling crises. It's always consciously or unconsciously borderline repetition compulsion cycles where they are triggered and they're responsible for their triggers, you aren't. They're triggered internally, feel all of this agony and pain and stuff that, I know what that feels like, but it's hard to describe it. Bottom line is, they don't know what it is. They don't have any like person on board, any like real self, besides false self and or protector self, to be able to think, oh, well, you know how like you might hurt and maybe you're confused as heck by a person with BPD, but you might say, well, it has something to do with when they yelled at me and I don't understand because borderlines don't even know that. They just have all this pain and all this tumult inside that they've had for their whole lives up till now, and then they don't even think about it. It's just like, it's so like what they're feeling is so like what happened with a parent more times than not, but not with every single borderline, but about 87% of them. And then it's like, and then you're the object of the parent representation. And so they just magically believe, like magically think it's like emotional reason. It's there's no logic. They just naturally think, I'm in all this agony, you must have done it to me. And then you get blamed for it, but you didn't do it in the first place. Because whether you would have said this instead of that, or done this instead of that, or didn't do that but did this, or didn't, but said that, it doesn't matter. People are agonizing over this stuff years after breakups with borderlines. It does not matter, because the fact that these relationships cannot work, though you might get blamed and screamed at, and quiet borderlines, it's a bit different, and they seem like they have so much more. They're closer to being able to relate, which is not necessarily true because you don't see what's going on inside of them. What's going on inside the quiet borderline gets pushed inside more. It sort of makes them harder to treat often than the raging, acting out borderline. But whether you're seeing it or not, it's inside of these people. And then they have to get rid of it because it feels like it's going to annihilate them, literally. So then they just start projective identification, projecting, blaming, and often screaming at you. But the problem is so many people with codependency believe it because of how you were treated in childhood, what you were blamed for, how you got codependency as a trauma adaptation or adverse experience adaptation in your own childhood. So many clients I've worked with over 35, almost 36 years now, they say, but I just felt so guilty and it was my fault and I felt like I got her or him so upset that I must have to make sure they're okay. But really, that's when codependents project out their wounded inner child who wasn't okay in childhood. How about that for a little bit of a zinger? It's true, but I wonder what you think of that. Let me know in the comments if you care to. So this idea of if you had a psych ward, and the person isn't saying on call, that's what I said, but it would just be crisis cycles. It wouldn't help. And that's what you're in all the time anyways, crisis cycles. And you can't help. And you can't regulate them. And it is okay to leave them. Even when it hurts like crazy because you don't know how, and what are you going to do for you, and how are you going to handle all your pain. And I'm out here to work with you to answer all those questions and more, and process and heal and recover and move forward in your life if you resonate with me. So the only other thing I wanted to say was, and the person said, I just lost the comment. That's okay. The person said, or CIA level skill set on a regular basis to make the relationship work. Well, I hope you've heard yet again in this video, as in all my content, these relationships don't work, won't work, aren't going to work. And that is the vast majority of them. But if they're not even diagnosed, but you see the patterns and they're kind of irrefutable patterns, then they're not going to get any help. And if they get misdiagnosed, like is going on these days with some clinicians, I have no idea why these people are out of their minds. Diagnosing people that need to be diagnosed with BPD with like autism or ADHD or CPTSD. Because when that misdiagnosis occurs, it might feel better for the person with borderline personality disorder because it is really super stigmatized. And borderline, I never use the word borderline in that pejorative, hateful way. That's not how I mean it, but that's how a lot of people mean it. And that's not really a fair thing, I don't think. The vilification of people with BPD, when people who are with them don't just look at the person you've been with, but it's like all borderlines are like this, or my borderline did this and therefore they all do, and etc. So anyway, CIA level skill set on a regular basis. Whatever this person might mean by that, I don't really know. I have a little bit of an idea. I've watched some podcasts on American politics and empire stuff and, what's going on. But people have different opinions, and that's fine. I just think that CIA level skill probably isn't anything that would work well in somebody's life. Whether you're with somebody without a personality disorder, but especially if you're with somebody with BPD. But I do think that what the commenter said was that they'd have to have this psych ward kind of situation and CIA level skill set on a regular basis to make the relationship work. And what I'm here to say is, because interesting the way they framed this commenter, even if you had those things, if you had those skills, whatever they are, like I have ideas, but I don't think they're meant for personal relationships if you want the relationship to last just in general. But whether you had the CIA level skills or whatever, and or a psych ward on call, and or like, I don't know, a bunch of other stuff you might dream about or think about, you can't regulate an untreated borderline, can't regulate somebody who doesn't know who they are. Back to borderline Humpty Dumpty of glass, smashes all over, and this happens to them in toddlerhood, in infancy, toddlerhood, before the age of 2, and just keeps getting worse. But they have emotional arrested development at the age of 2, by or before then. And I'm still explaining this to client after client after client. Why? Maybe you haven't seen my videos on it, but I don't know if anybody else is talking about it. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But anyway, the bottom line is this person saying, I would have to have done immense things often all the time to try to make the relationship work with this borderline male she thought was amazing. And that was almost a perfect match. No, they're so far from being, they're further than people can even like imagine, understand, or know, especially in the beginning, maybe just after. They're so far from a perfect match, I don't believe there is such a thing as a perfect match. There are people who are healthier, right? So not necessarily having codependency or having a personality disorder. They're in relationships. And what makes those relationships healthy is the health of each individual, etc., of course. But also, that doesn't make anybody a perfect match. It's compatibility. And it's mutuality and reciprocity. And you don't get any of that with a person with BPD because you don't know who they are. So to this person's end of their comment, they would have had to like move heaven and earth like a billion times over to make the relationship work. If you are still wanting your ex back, if you are reverse hoovering a borderline ex, if you are still open and allowing them to hoover you, but you might not be contacting or responding, so many people think that's a good job of no contact. No, it's not. You're still getting intermittent reinforcement when you get hoovered, even if you ignore them. It's still holding you back. It's still strengthening the trauma bond, which is what happens when you talk to them again, when you listen to their hoovers, or you reverse hoover. Every time you try to recycle this relationship, as many people do many times, you are strengthening the trauma bond, and you are getting the reward of intermittent reinforcement that takes all your pain away until it doesn't work again, and then you're back at square one again. And I've worked with so many clients this happens to, and when they get back to square one, by the way, it doesn't mean they forget everything they learned, but the pain is just exploded again. It's so important, if there's no children involved, go full no contact. And I think people know what that means. No cheating, nobody don't read this, nobody can't change my email, no, but I've had my phone number too long. Those are all ways you're going to block your own recovery. These relationships, ladies and gentlemen, do not work. Stop trying. Stop abandoning yourself as a codependent. Stop losing yourself, giving yourself away, giving, while you're taking, they're giving you abuse and you're trying to love them. And the more you love them and the more you really try to provide for them, the more they're going to hate you anyway, because you've now morphed into devalued object other, bad parent, and you can't be that perfect, loving, giving parent. And even if you could emulate that very well, guess what borderlines do with that? Unconsciously, often in those repetition compulsion cycles, experiencing you as that bad parent, even when you're the good parent. Like the second they get that you're not perfect, and even if you were and you could meet all their needs, they'd still leave, because they hate themselves inside. There isn't really a self in there to hate either, but they feel horrible about themselves, and they project this out all over people too. It's like, you can't dare love me, I'm a piece of crap. And sometimes people will say that out loud. Sometimes that's how they feel, but they might not consciously know that. So it's all complicated, it really is, even when people get through a lot of it. And I've had clients saying recently, they're hearing what I'm saying and I'm augmenting their understanding maybe in some way. And they're like, but man, I really still miss him or her. And why do they have to be like this? But it's the borderline Humpty Dumpty glass that maybe at the age of 3 months or 3 days or a year and a half, but before the age of 2, crashes and ego fragment, smash all over the place, the self that was supposed to be able to grow through early stages of childhood development, they can't grow through that trauma. And it's often from a borderline or narcissistic mother and or maybe both parents, or maybe a psychopathic mother, but it's often a very, very traumatic situation where too much lacks and the self is abandoned. And I'll quote it one more time, like Melanie Klein, a mother of object relations, said, abandonment trauma, or so a mother that comes and is kind of not really perceived, but felt on a biological level, like threatening one minute and maybe like okay the next minute. It starts splitting in infants often. And it's not a verbal thing, and it's not a logical or thought process. It's a biological response by an infant in many cases. And the thing is, then there becomes, through a little bit more time, there's like good mom and bad mom. And the split is firm, and then the split gets applied to everybody else. These relationships don't work. And as much as you can see in the idealization or otherwise sometimes, a wonderful shard or piece of a person with BPD, it's not enough. It's not a whole person. It's nothing you can depend on, and everything you give them, you're not going to get back. Anything mutually loving, respectful, kind enough communication, mature adult they can't do it. So the relationships don't work. And as I've said before, as the relationship begins unknowingly to the borderline and to the codependent, and people who think they're not codependent, that probably are, as it begins, it also starts to end. That's how predetermined the issues of what borderline personality disorder really are, along with codependency and the interplay of the dynamics as well. The relationships are destined to fail. And people are destined to lose themselves and to be very wounded on the codependent side, on you're the ex now. Or if this is a family member, or it's a friend, or you were the favorite person but not a romantic partner. It's the same, not with every person with BPD, but a lot of people with BPD make no better a friend than they do a partner. They don't make good employees because you can't get along with anybody. The relationships don't work, even if you had your own magical psych ward, people on standing by to help your borderline in every crisis, you just go in circles. And if you had all those, like the person said, CI level, whatever, like skills or whatever, won't do squat. Why? Because the borderline is the borderline Humpty Dumpty, bells, smashed glass, ego, fragmentation, which is from trauma in childhood, not a fall, obviously. And so they don't have a self. So they can't hear you properly, they don't perceive you properly, they misconceive and misconstrue a lot of things because they're usually more re-experiencing the past in the here and now and not knowing it. And even if they know it, they can't stop it. They can't regulate it. They can't help themselves. And unless they can really help themselves and really find out who they are and build up a self, an identity in therapy over years, they're not ever going to be relationship worthy.